Hey everybody, this is the next part of plants. Plants part 3, we're going to talk about gymnosperms today. Now, gymnosperms and then also angiosperms, which we'll talk about in plants part 4, they're the most plentiful plants in the biosphere today. Okay, the seeds contain a sporophyte embryo and they store food in a protective coat, and that really allows the embryo to survive during long periods of dormancy. And so gymnosperms and angiosperms, they tend to be very hardy plants, and they survive when it's really cold or when they don't have a lot of food, times like that. Now, gymnosperms, those are heterosporous. They make two kinds of spores that produce two types of gametophytes, male and female. Okay. The male gametophyte is produced by pollen. Okay, and pollination is just the deposition of pollen on a female gametophyte, and the pollen tube, basically sperm passes through there to reach the ovule. There's no water necessary. And then the female gametophyte develops within the ovule, which eventually becomes a seed that disperses the offspring. Now, gymnosperms are really the most plentiful plants on the earth today, and there are 800 to 1,000 species of gymnosperms, and these are really our cone-bearing plants, not the ones that have flowers or fruit. Okay, gymnosperms have cones. Now, here we go with the life cycle. Just bear with me here. The pollen cones are pretty small, and they're found in the lower branches. And the seed cones, which we see all the time around here, those are larger and they tend to be higher up in the tree. Now, pollen sacs, you've got a pollen cone that's on the underside of each scale. Okay. And really pollination happens when a pollen grain is brought to the vicinity of a female gametophyte by wind or a pollinator like a bee or another animal like a dog or something like that. Now, within the pollen sacs, you're going to have microsporocytes, which are going to undergo meiosis and make these little microspores. So you're going from diploid to haploid right about now through the process of meiosis. And so after that, you're going to have pollen grains, which are going to be carried in the wind during pollination, okay, and they're going to be carried to the seed cone. And then basically you're going to end up with a megaspore, okay, and an ovule there. Okay. Now, only one of the megaspores is going to undergo mitosis and mature into the female gametophyte. Okay, and those gametophytes are going to have 2 to 6 archegonia, and each archegonium is going to have a single egg near the ovule opening. And then once you get a pollen grain that reaches a seed cone, it's going to become a mature male gametophyte. Okay? And so a pollen tube is going to head towards a female gametophyte and discharge the sperm. Okay? And eventually you'll end up with a sporophyte after you get fertilization and the ovule is going to mature and become the seed cone, the seed composed of the embryo, excuse me. Then you're going to end up with, reserved food and a seed coat. And basically the seed cone is going to eventually release these winged seeds. And when the seeds germinate, then the sporophyte is going to develop into a new pine tree. Okay, so kind of a long process. Now, most gymnosperms have cones, and on the surfaces of those cone scales you have ovules, which are going to become seeds later. Okay. Now, ovules are not completely enclosed by diploid tissue. And then gymnosperms that we know a lot about are conifers, cycads, ginkgos, and gnetophytes. Okay. And these types of seed plants, they have special types of tissues called meristematic tissue, and that allows plants to just grow their entire lives. And gymnosperms, they don't have really a final body form, but they continue to grow body mass until the trees finally die. And some of these trees can be up to like hundreds of years old. Now conifers, that can be like pine trees. We have a lot of those around here. Spruce trees, fir. You see those in colder weather. Redwood trees you see out in like California. Cypress trees, hemlock. They're very adapted to cold, dry weather. They have needle-like kind of leaves that are good at conserving water. You're going to have a dominant sporophyte in these conifers that produce seed cones and pollen cones. And conifers are very important for making paper, and then also in construction, like for building houses. Okay, we get a lot of our wood from conifers. Okay, for building, you know, buildings and all. And chemicals, they're also extracted from the rosin or the pitch. Pitch is actually the substance that protects conifers from attack by fungi and insects. That rosin or the pitch is used for waterproofing. It's also found in varnish and in paints. Okay, so really conifers, you can use a lot of the tree for building materials and, you know, paint and things like that. Here's some pictures of some conifers that we've probably seen before. Okay, so just, there we go. Now, other gymnosperms you might have heard about. Cycads, those kind of look like palms or ferns. I'll show you that in a second. And then, and they were plentiful, you know, around the dinosaur times. Cycads are actually in danger of extinction because they tend to grow really slowly. Okay. Then you have ginkgos. Ginkgo biloba. Okay. You find those somewhat in this, you know, in Texarkana, but they're also found a lot in city parks. They're very resistant to pollution, and male trees are actually preferred because female trees tend to smell bad. Okay. And then you have netophytes. If you've heard of ephedra, okay, ephedra comes from netophytes. Okay, ephedra, those are compounds derived from ephedra, obviously, and they're used in cold and allergy medications, weight loss products. Ephedra tends to suppress the appetite and also stimulates the thyroid gland. Okay, it's really a bronchodilator. It stimulates the sympathetic nervous system. Okay, and netophytes, they have very long leaves, kind of shrub-like, close to the ground. Don't worry about these two kinds at the bottom here. Okay, and here are just some pictures. Here you've got pollen cones and seed cones. Okay, there's a ginkgo tree. Okay, here's another gymnosperm, another netophyte. Okay, don't worry about it though.